Martina Jenkins held her breath as she guided her daughter through the narrow airplane aisle. 6-year-old Zoe bounced with each step, her small backpack bobbing against her shoulders. "Careful, baby," Martina whispered, her eyes scanning the row numbers. Almost there. Seat 23B and 23C waited for them, tucked in the back of economy class. Martina gestured for Zoe to take the window seat, knowing how her daughter loved watching the clouds. As they settled in, Martina's shoulders finally relaxed a fraction. They had made it, through security, through boarding, through the quiet panic of almost being late when the bus to the airport had been delayed. "Mommy, look." Zoe pressed her face against the small window, her breath creating tiny circles of fog. "The men are throwing suitcases." Martina smiled despite her exhaustion. "They're loading our bags into the plane, honey." A flight attendant walked by, her uniform crisp and perfect. "Can I help you with anything?" she asked, her practiced smile not quite reaching her eyes. "We're fine, thank you," Martina answered. The words had become automatic over the past year. "We're fine, we're managing, we're getting by." When the attendant moved on, Martina slipped her hand into her purse. Her fingers found the small zippered compartment where she kept her money. The familiar knot of anxiety tightened in her chest as she carefully counted what remained. 4 $10 bills, 2 5s, 3 1s, and a collection of quarters, dimes and nickels. $63.75. Everything she had in the world until tomorrow. The flight to Minneapolis wasn't supposed to happen like this. The interviewing company had promised to reimburse her travel expenses, but their policy was reimbursement after hiring. Martina had scraped together just enough for the flight, leaving almost nothing for food and transportation once they landed. But the opportunity was too good to pass up. A full-time accounting position with benefits, a chance to use her degree again instead of juggling part-time jobs that barely covered rent. "Mommy, I'm hungry," Zoe whispered, her big brown eyes looking up trustingly. "I packed some snacks, remember?" Martina reached for the small bag of crackers and apple slices she had prepared that morning. "We'll have these now, and then maybe get something special when we land." Zoe nodded seriously, taking a cracker with the care of a child who had learned that food wasn't always guaranteed. The sight made Martina's heart ache. She had tried so hard to shield her daughter from the worst of their struggles since Thomas died. The car accident had taken more than her husband. It had taken their financial security, their home, and the carefree childhood Zoe deserved. Announcements crackled overhead as the plane prepared for departure. Martina helped Zoe with her seatbelt, then fastened her own, trying to ignore the couple across the aisle complaining about being bumped from first class. "Are we going to our new home?" Zoe asked, her voice hopeful. Martina smoothed her daughter's braids, each one finished with the bright blue beads Zoe had picked out. "Not yet, sweetheart. Remember what we talked about? This is just for Mommy's job interview. We're going to stay in a special room for one night, and then fly back home tomorrow night. If she got the job, they would move in 3 weeks. If not," Martina pushed the thought away. She couldn't afford to think about what would happen if this opportunity fell through. Their landlord had already warned that he wouldn't renew their lease next month. The neighborhood was upgrading, which meant rent increases they couldn't possibly meet. The plane began taxiing down the runway, and Zoe clutched her mother's hand, her eyes wide with excitement. It was her first time flying. In different circumstances, this would have been an adventure to celebrate. "It's like a big bird," Martina explained, grateful for her daughter's joy. "We're going to go up into the clouds." As the plane gathered speed, Zoe squealed with delight. The sound drew smiles from nearby passengers, a moment of shared humanity in the cramped space. Then came the strange floating sensation as they lifted off the ground, the city growing smaller beneath them. "We're flying," Zoe whispered in awe. "Yes, baby, we're flying." For a moment, Martina allowed herself to enjoy the wonder of it all through her daughter's eyes. But reality intruded as the seatbelt sign dinged off and passengers began shifting in their seats. The flight was only 2 hours long, but Martina knew they would be offering drinks and snacks for purchase. Her stomach growled traitorously, reminding her she had skipped breakfast to make sure Zoe had enough. She recounted her money again, this time more discreetly. If she spent $5 on the flight, they would have $58 and change for the taxi from the airport, and some kind of dinner tonight. The hotel thankfully included breakfast. She had packed extra food in their checked bag for tomorrow, knowing they couldn't afford airport prices again. Ladies and gentlemen, our flight attendants will now be coming through the cabin with our beverage service. Snacks and light meals are available for purchase. Martina tensed. She had hoped Zoe might nap through this part. Mommy, can we get those cookies like the lady has? Zoe pointed at a passenger receiving a package of biscotti with her coffee. Not today, sweetheart. Remember, we have our special snacks? Martina pulled out the small bag again, though it was nearly empty now, and we'll have a nice dinner when we get to the hotel. She didn't know yet what that dinner would be. Maybe the hotel had a microwave, and they could find a grocery store nearby. Maybe there was a fast food place with a $1 menu. The calculations ran constantly in her head, like background music she couldn't shut off. When the flight attendant reached their row with the cart, Martina asked for water, free, thankfully, for both of them. Zoe looked longingly at the basket of snacks displayed on the cart but didn't ask again. The small acceptance of their circumstances from one so young nearly broke Martina's composure. Just water, thank you, she repeated, avoiding the attendant's eyes. As the cart moved on, Martina pulled out the folder containing her resume and interview preparation notes. She had printed extra copies at the library yesterday, using the last of her weekly page allowance. Her former co-worker April had helped revise her resume, emphasizing her 4 years of accounting experience before Zoe was born, and the bookkeeping. She had done part-time since then. These are your big numbers, Mommy, Zoe said, pointing to the spreadsheet examples Martina had included. That's right. Martina smiled. Mommy helps companies understand their money. The irony wasn't lost on her. Here she was, an accountant who could balance corporate books down to the penny, counting quarters to make it through the next 24 hours. Zoe yawned and leaned against Martina's arm. The excitement of the takeoff was wearing off, and she was growing sleepy. Martina shifted to make her daughter more comfortable, careful not to disturb the older woman sleeping in the aisle seat next to them. As Zoe's eyes drifted closed, Martina allowed herself a rare moment of vulnerability. Tears welled up, but she blinked them back quickly. This was not the place to break down. There was never a place for that. Not when she was all Zoe had. The interview materials blurred before her eyes. What if they asked why she had left her last full-time position? How could she explain that her husband's death had shattered her so completely that she couldn't function in those early months, much less maintain the demanding schedule of the corporate accounting department? That by the time she was ready to return, her position had been filled? Martina took a deep breath and pulled out her phone. She opened the photo of Thomas she kept there, his smile bright against his dark skin, his arm around her at Zoe's 3rd birthday party. It was the last one they had celebrated as a family. I'm trying, she whispered to the image. I'm really trying. She looked at her sleeping daughter, then back at the dwindling cash in her purse. Tomorrow had to work out. There simply wasn't room for any other outcome. The plane hit a patch of turbulence, jolting her from her thoughts. Zoe stirred but didn't wake. Across the aisle, a man in a suit looked up from his tablet, momentarily catching Martina's eye. She looked away quickly, not wanting to be caught in this private moment of counting coins, of calculating survival. The beater plane steadied again, but Martina's hand still trembled slightly as she returned the money to her purse. $63.75. It would have to be enough. Outside the window, the clouds stretched endlessly, white and peaceful. Somewhere beyond them waited Minneapolis, and a chance, however slim, at a new beginning. Martina closed her eyes, her arm around her sleeping daughter, and allowed herself to hope just a little that tomorrow might change everything. James Whitaker shifted uncomfortably in seat 24D, directly across the aisle from the young mother and her daughter. The quarterly reports on his tablet demanded his attention, but he found his eyes drifting repeatedly to the woman as she counted her money with careful, worried movements. He hadn't meant to watch. In fact, James prided himself on respecting others' privacy, especially in the cramped confines of economy class, a place he rarely found himself these days. Horizon Technologies had grown enough in the past decade that first-class travel was standard for its executives. But a last-minute booking change had landed him here, sandwiched between a businessman who had fallen asleep before takeoff and a college student with headphones pumping music so loud James could hear the tinny beat. The mother across the aisle looked exhausted. Deep shadows hung beneath her eyes, yet her movements as she tended to her daughter were gentle, patient. When the child had pointed excitedly out the window during takeoff, the woman's face had transformed, years falling away as she shared in her daughter's wonder. Now, as the little girl slept against her mother's shoulder, the woman's expression had returned to one of quiet calculation. James recognized that look. It was the same one his own mother had worn throughout his childhood, the face of someone figuring out how to stretch too little into enough. Beverly Whitaker had raised him alone after his father walked out, taking shifts at the hospital as a nurse's aide during the day and cleaning office buildings at night. James had grown up knowing the sound of coins being counted, understanding before he could do long division that numbers could mean safety or hunger. The flight attendant's cart bumped James's elbow as it passed, pulling him back to the present. "Something to drink, sir?" the attendant asked. "Coffee, please, black." He glanced at the snack selection. "And I'll take 2 of those cookie packages." The attendant handed him his items, and James swiped his credit card through the reader without checking the amount. Such a small thing now, not having to worry about the price of airplane cookies. Yet he remembered clearly the Christmas his mother had splurged on a single candy bar for his stocking, how rich he'd felt as he made it last for 3 days. Across the aisle, the little girl stirred in her sleep, and her mother gently stroked her hair, whispering something too quiet for James to hear. The tenderness of the gesture struck him deeply. The woman couldn't be much older than 30, but there was a weathered resilience about her, the kind that came from facing storms alone. James turned back to his reports, forcing himself to focus on the projections for the next quarter. Horizon Technologies had exceeded expectations again. The financial department had streamlined operations so effectively that profits were up 12%, even after implementing the expanded benefits package for employees that he had pushed through. Despite board resistance, he had always believed that taking care of people was good business. His company offered childcare assistance, comprehensive health care, flexible schedules for parents, policies he had instituted thinking of his mother, who had missed school plays and parent conferences because she couldn't afford to take the time off. The plane hit another patch of turbulence, strong enough that the seatbelt sign dinged back on. James closed his tablet and secured his tray table. Across the aisle, he saw the woman startle awake. She must have drifted off, and reach protectively for her daughter. As the plane bounced roughly, something fell from the woman's lap. A folder that spilled papers across the floor. Without thinking, James unbuckled his seatbelt and knelt to help gather them before they scattered further. "Thank you," the woman said, her voice soft with embarrassment as the plane steadied. "You didn't have to do that. It's no trouble." James collected several papers, noting with professional interest that they appeared to be accounting documents, spreadsheets, financial projections, and what looked like a resume. He handed them back carefully, conscious of not appearing to read the contents. "I hope these didn't get out of order." "They're fine." The woman tucked the papers back into the folder with practiced efficiency. Her name tag from a previous flight was still attached to the folder, Martina Jenkins. "I appreciate the help." Her daughter stirred, blinking sleepily. "Are we there, Mommy?" "Not yet, Zoe. Go back to sleep if you're tired." The child yawned, then noticed James. Instead of the shyness he expected, she gave him a gap-toothed smile. "Hi. Do you like flying? This is my first time on an airplane." James couldn't help but smile back. "I fly a lot for work, but I remember my first time. I was a little older than you, maybe 10, and I thought it was the most amazing thing in the world." "It is amazing," Zoe agreed enthusiastically. "We went up through the clouds and everything got small." "Zoe, don't bother the man," Martina said gently. He's working. It's no bother, James assured her, recognizing the careful politeness of someone who had learned to make herself small, to avoid imposing. I needed a break from these reports anyway. The seatbelt sign dinged off, and the flight attendant announced they were past the turbulence. Across the aisle, Martina Jenkins relaxed marginally, though her hand still hovered near her purse, where James had seen her counting bills and coins earlier. What kind of work do you do? Zoe asked, her curiosity undimmed by her mother's gentle admonition. James hesitated, aware that his usual answer, CEO of Horizon Technologies, often changed how people spoke to him. I help run a company that makes software, he said instead. Computer programs that help other businesses. Mommy works with numbers, Zoe informed him proudly. She can add really, really big ones in her head, even faster than my teacher. Martina smiled, a flash of genuine warmth breaking through her reserved expression. I'm an accountant, or I was. I'm in between positions right now. Something in her careful phrasing told James everything she wasn't saying. The economy had been brutal the past few years, with layoffs hitting mid-level professionals hard. Looking at her professional folder and the way she spoke, he guessed she was highly qualified but had fallen victim to corporate restructuring, that clean, bloodless term for cutting people's livelihoods. The job market has been tough, he offered, giving her an opening without pressing. Martina nodded, her expression guarded but grateful for the neutral acknowledgement. Yes, though it's improving. I have an interview tomorrow in Minneapolis with Vantage Financial. She smoothed her daughter's hair. We're flying back home tomorrow night. James knew Vantage by reputation, a solid regional firm, good benefits, but not particularly innovative in their work culture. They had tried to poach some of his financial team a year ago. What's your specialty? He asked, genuinely interested now. Cost accounting and financial analysis, primarily. I was with Ellis Group for 4 years as a senior analyst before. She paused, something complicated crossing her face. Before I needed to take some time for family matters. Since then I've been doing contract work and some bookkeeping. James noticed she didn't mention how long this since then had been, but the careful way she budgeted told him it had been significant. He also noted there was no mention of a partner or spouse, just her and the little girl with the bright, blue beads in her braids. Ellis Group has a solid reputation, he said. I've worked with some of their people on industry committees. For the first time, Martina looked at him with professional interest, rather than just polite acknowledgement. You're in finance too? Originally, he admitted. I started in corporate finance before moving into management. That was underselling it considerably, but it kept the conversation on level ground. The principles still guide most of my decision-making. Martina nodded. It's a good foundation. Numbers don't lie, even when people try to make them tell different stories. The insight impressed him. It was exactly the philosophy he tried to instill in his own financial department, honesty in accounting, as the basis for all other business ethics. Zoe tugged at her mother's sleeve. Mommy, I'm still hungry. A flash of distress crossed Martina's face, quickly hidden. We'll eat soon, baby. Remember, we're saving our money for a nice dinner at the hotel. James remembered the cookies he had purchased. Without making a show of it, he spoke to Zoe. You know, they gave me an extra package of cookies and I can't eat them all. Would you like them? Zoe looked to her mother for permission. Martina hesitated, and James saw the internal struggle. Pride versus her daughters. Hunger. They'll just go to waste otherwise, he said quietly, understanding her reluctance to accept what might feel like charity. After a moment, Martina nodded. That's very kind of you. Zoe, what do you say? Thank you. The little girl accepted the package with reverent hands as if being given treasure. You're very welcome. James smiled, then turned back to his tablet, giving them privacy as Zoe carefully opened the cookies and shared one with her mother. The cabin lights dimmed slightly as the flight continued. Most passengers dozed or watched movies on their screens. James found himself unable to concentrate on his reports. Instead, he thought about Beverly Whitaker, who had worked herself to exhaustion to give him opportunities, who had died of a heart attack at 58, just as his company was beginning to succeed. Too late for him to give her the comfortable retirement she deserved. He thought about the policies he had implemented at Horizon, the emphasis on work-life balance, on supporting parents, on giving people second chances. He thought about the opening in his financial department, the one his CFO had been trying to fill for 2 months, complaining that they couldn't find someone with both technical skills and the right cultural fit. Across the aisle, Martina Jenkins was quietly reviewing what appeared to be interview notes, her sleeping daughter leaning against her. She worked with focused intensity, highlighting key points, her lips moving slightly as she rehearsed answers. Here was someone fighting with everything she had, not just for herself but for the little girl beside her. James made a decision. He would wait for the right moment, approach it carefully. He didn't want to overstep or make her uncomfortable, but he recognized talent and determination when he saw UIT and his company needed both. The plane began its initial descent into Minneapolis. Outside, the late afternoon sun broke through the clouds, casting golden light through the windows. Martina gently woke Zoe, helping her put away her coloring book and prepare for landing. "Look, Mommy, everything's getting bigger again." Zoe pressed her face to the window as the ground rushed up to meet them. "That means we're almost there," Martina said, her voice warm with her daughter's excitement, but edged with the tension of what waited for them. A strange city, limited funds, and the weight of tomorrow's interview. James watched them, remembering how his mother had always faced challenges, head high, shoulders back, fear carefully hidden beneath determination. He saw that same strength in Martina Jenkins. Whatever happened next, he suspected she was someone who wouldn't be down for long. But perhaps, just perhaps, he could help ensure she didn't have to struggle quite so hard for the next step up. The landing gear deployed with a mechanical thunk. James put away his tablet and prepared for arrival, the cookie wrapper on his tray, reminding him of small kindnesses and the way they could open doors to something larger. Sometimes, he reflected, the most important business decisions happened not in boardrooms but in unexpected moments of human connection. The plane touched down with a gentle bounce, and a scattering of applause broke out among the passengers. Across the aisle, Martina and Zoe joined in, their hands clapping in unison, matching smiles on their faces. For this moment, at least, they had arrived safely at a new destination, together and hopeful for what might come next. The plane had barely come to a complete stop at the gate when passengers began unbuckling their seatbelts, eager to retrieve their belongings and exit. Martina remained seated, knowing there was no point in rushing. She and Zoe would be among the last to disembark anyway, given their seats near the back. "Can I get my backpack down, Mommy?" Zoe asked, pointing to the overhead compartment. "No, baby, let me do it when it's our turn. It might fall and hurt someone." Martina glanced at her watch. It was just past 4 in the afternoon. They had plenty of time to find their way to the budget hotel she had booked on the outskirts of the city. The interview tomorrow wasn't until 10, which gave her time to press her suit again and review her notes one final time. Across the aisle, the businessman who had helped gather her papers was organizing his belongings. She had caught him watching her earlier when she was counting her money, and the realization had made her cheeks burn with shame. But there had been no judgment in his eyes when they spoke briefly, just a quiet understanding that felt surprisingly genuine. People began shuffling forward in the narrow aisle. Martina collected Zoe's discarded wrappers and tucked them into the seat pocket, making sure they left nothing behind. "Remember to stay close to me in the airport," she reminded Zoe. "It's going to be very busy with lots of people hurrying." "I'll hold your hand the whole time," Zoe promised solemnly. "And I'll wear my backpack like you showed me with both straps." Martina smiled at her daughter's earnestness. "That's right. You're such a good helper." The line of departing passengers finally reached their row. Martina stood carefully retrieving their bags from the overhead compartment. She slung her purse across her body, keeping one hand on it at all times. Inside was everything that mattered. Their IDs, her nearly empty wallet, the folder with her resume and certificates. "After you," said a deep voice behind her. Martina turned to find the businessman waiting patiently. He gestured for them to go ahead. "Thank you," she said, guiding Zoe into the slow-moving line. The plane lurched slightly as another passenger bumped into the seats and Martina stumbled forward, her purse swinging. The movement sent several coins tumbling from the unzipped inner pocket, scattering across the floor of the aisle with distinctive metallic pings. Heat rushed to Martina's face as passengers turned to look. The coins, quarters, dimes, nickels, rolled in various directions, some disappearing under seats. Her carefully counted money, the padding between them and hunger, spreading before strangers' eyes. "Oh!" Zoe cried, immediately dropping to her knees to chase a rolling quarter. "Mommy, I'll get them!" "Zoe, wait!" Martina began, but her daughter was already crawling between legs and feet, determined to recover every cent. Embarrassment threatened to choke her. People were watching, some with impatience, others with uncomfortable pity. She knelt to retrieve the coins closest to her, keeping her eyes down, wishing the floor would open and swallow her whole. "Excuse me, coming through." The businessman's voice again, now at floor level. He had knelt as well and was efficiently collecting coins that had rolled toward the back of the plane. Without fuss or comment, he gathered them in his large palm. Another passenger, an older woman, stopped her progress toward the exit to pick up a dime by her foot. "Here you go, dear," she said, pressing it into Martina's hand with a smile that held no judgment. A flight attendant appeared, holding a wayward quarter. "I think this is yours," she said kindly. Slowly, the scattered coins made their way back to Martina. The businessman approached with his handful, carefully tipping them into her outstretched palm. "I think that's all of them," he said, his voice pitched low so only she could hear. $12.35, if I counted correctly. The precision of his count surprised her. Most people wouldn't bother to tally someone else's spilled change. "Thank you," Martina managed, her voice steadier than she felt. She quickly secured the coins in the zippered compartment of her wallet, double-checking that it was properly closed this time. Zoe appeared at her side, proud of her rescue efforts. "I found 5 coins, Mommy, 2 quarters and 3 dimes. "Good job, sweetheart." Martina squeezed her daughter's shoulder. "You're my best helper." The line was moving again. Martina took Zoe's hand and stepped forward, aware of the businessman still behind them. She wanted to say something more, to acknowledge his kindness, without drawing further attention to her situation, but the words wouldn't come. As they finally exited the plane, the flight attendants bid them goodbye with practiced smiles. The jet bridge stretched ahead, guiding them toward the terminal and the next challenge, finding affordable transportation to their hotel. "That was exciting," Zoe declared, apparently unbothered by the coin incident. "Our money tried to escape, but we caught it all." Martina laughed despite herself. "Yes, we did. With help," added the businessman who had caught up to walk beside them. "Your daughter is quite the coin hunter." Zoe beamed at the compliment. "I'm fast, and I can see under the seats because I'm small." "A very useful skill," he agreed seriously, then extended his hand to Martina. "I don't think we properly introduced ourselves. I'm James Whitaker." "Martina Jenkins," she replied, shaking his hand briefly. His grip was firm but not overpowering. "And this is my daughter, Zoe." "Hi, Mr. Whitaker," Zoe waved enthusiastically. "Thank you for helping with our money and for the cookies." "You're very welcome, Zoe." They emerged into the bustling terminal, the noise and movement momentarily overwhelming after the confined space of the airplane. Martina instinctively tightened her grip on Zoe's hand. "Are you familiar with Minneapolis?" James asked as they walked toward baggage claim. Martina shook her head. "This is our first time here. We're just staying overnight for my job interview." "With Vantage Financial, right?" he recalled. "They're located downtown near the river." "Yes, that's right." Martina was surprised he remembered that detail from their brief conversation on the plane. "Where are you staying?" "The Westbrook Inn," Martina answered, naming the budget hotel she'd found online that offered free airport shuttle service. It wasn't in the best area, but it was clean according to reviews, and most importantly, affordable. Something flickered across James's face. "That's quite a distance from downtown. The morning traffic could be challenging." Martina had researched bus routes last night, calculating times and fares. I've worked it out. There's a direct bus that will get me there with plenty of time. They reached the escalator leading down to baggage claim. Zoe approached it cautiously, her eyes wide. Remember how we practiced on the mall escalator? Martina encouraged her. Step on carefully and hold the rail. Zoe nodded seriously, then stepped onto the moving stairs with deliberate care, gripping the rubber handrail tightly. Martina followed with James behind them. Your daughter is very composed for her age, he observed. Most kids her age would be bouncing off the walls after being confined on a plane. She's had to grow up a bit faster than I would have liked, Martina admitted, then immediately wished she hadn't. Something about this man made her let down her guard, which wasn't like her at all. They reached the bottom of the escalator and followed the signs to the baggage carousel assigned to their flight. People clustered around it, waiting for their luggage to appear. Martina led Zoe to a spot slightly away from the crowd, where they could still see the carousel but weren't in danger of being jostled. Which one is our suitcase? Zoe asked, studying the bags that had begun circling on the conveyor belt. The blue one with the white ribbon tied to the handle, Martina reminded her. Keep your eyes open for it. James stood nearby, though he didn't appear to be watching for luggage. Instead, he seemed to be considering something, his brow furrowed slightly. Ms. Jenkins, he said finally, I hope you won't find this presumptuous, but I couldn't help noticing your background in accounting. You mentioned you worked for Ellis Group? Martina nodded, wondering where this was going. Yes, in their corporate accounting department. I was there for 4 years. What exactly did you do there? The question seemed odd, but his tone was professional rather than merely curious. Martina found herself answering as she would in an interview. I specialized in cost accounting and financial analysis. My team was responsible for identifying inefficiencies in the supply chain and manufacturing processes. We implemented a new tracking system that reduced waste by nearly 12%. James nodded, his expression thoughtful. That's impressive. Ellis has a reputation for being resistant to new technologies. They were, Martina confirmed, warming to the subject despite herself. Getting approval for the system upgrade took months of presentations and data, but once they saw the potential savings, they came around. And after Ellis Group? Martina hesitated. This was always the difficult part to explain. My husband passed away unexpectedly 3 years ago. I took some time away from full-time work to care for our daughter and get our affairs in order. What she didn't say was how Thomas's death had devastated them financially as well as emotionally, how his life insurance had barely covered the funeral and outstanding medical bills, how her grief had been so overwhelming that she couldn't function in her high-pressure job, and by the time she was ready to return, her position had been filled. I'm very sorry for your loss, James said quietly, his eyes kind but not pitying. That must have been incredibly difficult. Thank you. Martina swallowed past the tightness in her throat. Since then, I've been doing contract work and bookkeeping for small businesses. It's allowed me flexibility for Zoe, but now that she's in school full-time, I'm ready to return to corporate accounting. Look, Mommy, I see it, Zoe suddenly exclaimed, pointing to the blue suitcase that had appeared among the parade of bags. Good. Aye, sweetheart. Martina moved toward the carousel with Zoe bouncing beside her. James stepped forward. Let me help with that. Before Martina could protest, he had smoothly lifted the suitcase from the conveyor belt. It wasn't particularly heavy. She had packed only essentials for their overnight stay, but she appreciated the gesture. Thank you, she said, reaching for the extended handle. It's no trouble. He kept hold of the suitcase. Actually, Ms. Jenkins, I was wondering if I might speak with you about something professional. I don't want to take up too much of your time, but I think it could be mutually beneficial. Martina hesitated, uncertain what he could possibly want to discuss. Had he recognized her from somewhere? Was there some connection to her former workplace she wasn't seeing? I'm the CEO of Horizon Technologies, he said, answering her unasked question. We're actually looking to fill a position in our financial department right now. Martina blinked in surprise. This polite man who had picked up her scattered coins and shared cookies with her daughter was the head of Horizon Technologies? The Company was well known in the tech world, frequently featured in business magazines for its innovative approaches and employee-centered policies. "You're James Whitaker," she said slowly, the name suddenly clicking into place. "I read an article about your company's expansion into sustainable technology last year." He looked slightly embarrassed. "I don't usually lead with my title. It tends to change how conversations go." Zoe tugged at Martina's hand. "Mommy, what's a CEO? It means he's the boss of the whole company, baby," Martina explained, still processing this revelation. Zoe's eyes widened as she looked up at James with new appreciation. "The whole company? Even bigger than my principal at school?" James laughed. "A bit different, but yes, I suppose so." Martina's mind raced. Why would the CEO of a major tech company want to speak with her about a position? Was this some kind of elaborate prank? But no, she had seen his name in business publications, and, now that she looked more closely, she recognized him from photographs. "Mr. Whitaker, I appreciate the interest, but I'm confused. You don't know anything about my qualifications beyond what little we've discussed." "On the contrary," he replied, "I know that you have solid experience with Ellis Group, a company known for its rigorous standards. I know you implemented a tracking system that significantly reduced waste, which tells me you're innovative and persuasive. I know you've maintained your skills through contract work while managing as a single parent, which speaks to your determination and work ethic." Put that way, it sounded impressive. Martina wasn't used to having her struggles framed as strengths. "But most importantly," James continued, "I've observed how you handle yourself in a stressful situation, how you interact with your daughter, and how you approach problems. Character and integrity matter as much to me as technical skills. Our CFO has been trying to fill this position for 2 months because we're looking for someone who fits our company culture, as well as the job requirements." Martina glanced at Zoe, who was watching a nearby family reunite with enthusiastic hugs. This unexpected conversation was surreal, especially after the humiliation of the coin incident. "What exactly are you proposing, Mr. Whitaker?" she asked, cautiously. "I'd like to discuss a potential position at Horizon Technologies. Our company headquarters is in Chicago. I believe that's where you're from as well." When she nodded, he continued. "The role is for a financial systems analyst. From what you've told me about your experience, it might be an excellent fit. Chicago, not Minneapolis. Not another city she would have to somehow move to with limited resources." "I have an interview tomorrow," she reminded him, though her interest was definitely piqued. "Of course, and you should absolutely keep that appointment. Vantage is a good company." James reached into his pocket and pulled out a business card, which he handed to her. "But I'd appreciate the opportunity to tell you more about Horizon and the position we have available. Perhaps over dinner this evening? My treat, of course, and Zoe is welcome to join us." Martina stared at the card in her hand. The Horizon Technologies logo gleamed in silver foil against the cream background. Below it was James's name, title, and contact information. A job in Chicago. A position that might actually use her skills and experience. A company known for treating its employees well. It seemed too good to be true, which immediately made her suspicious. Why would this successful businessman take such an interest in her? The cynical part of her mind, the part shaped by years of struggle and disappointment, whispered warnings. "Mr. Whitaker, this is very unexpected. I appreciate the offer, but..." She trailed off, unsure how to express her concerns without sounding ungrateful or paranoid. James seemed to understand her hesitation. "I can imagine how unusual this must seem. To be completely transparent, Ms. Jenkins, I recognize something in your situation that resonated with me personally. My mother raised me alone after my father left when I was young. She worked multiple jobs to make ends meet, often counting pennies to get us through the week." His expression grew distant for a moment, as if looking back through years. "She was the most capable, hard-working person I've ever known, but opportunities were scarce. For a single mother without connections. When I started Horizon, I promised myself that talent and character would always matter more than polish or pedigree." Martina felt something loosen in her chest. His words rang true, echoing experiences she knew all too well. I understand, she said quietly, and I appreciate your candor. Zoe returned to her side, having lost interest in the reuniting family. Mommy, I'm hungry. Can we eat soon? James glanced at his watch. There's a restaurant not far from here that serves excellent comfort food, simple but good, and they have a children's menu. Would that work for you both? Martina hesitated only briefly. The chance to learn more about a potential position in Chicago in a company she actually admired was too valuable to pass up. And the honest truth was that she and Zoe would eat better tonight than she had planned. That would be fine, she agreed. Thank you. James smiled, looking genuinely pleased. Excellent. My rental car is waiting, so we can head there directly if that works for you. As they walked together toward the exit, Zoe skipping ahead within the boundaries Martina had set, something like hope began to unfurl in Martina's chest. She didn't know where this unexpected turn would lead, but for the first time in a long while, the path ahead seemed to hold more promise than struggle. The spilled coins that had seemed like such a mortifying disaster had somehow opened a door she never could have anticipated. Whatever happened next, whether with Vantage Financial tomorrow or this surprising opportunity with Horizon Technologies, Martina knew she would face it with the same determination that had carried her this far. Is that your car? Zoe asked, excitedly as they approached a sleek black sedan where a driver stood waiting. It's just a rental, James explained, signaling to the driver to open the trunk for Martina's suitcase. It's fancy, Zoe declared, impressed by the leather seats as the driver opened the rear door for them. Martina helped Zoe into the car, then slid in beside her, still clutching James's business card like a talisman. The weight of the day's travel and emotions suddenly caught up with her, leaving her both exhausted and curiously energized. As James settled into the seat across from them and the car pulled away from the curb, Martina allowed herself to imagine just for a moment a future where counting coins in secret was no longer necessary, where her skills were valued, her work meaningful, and her daughter's bright spirit undiminished by worry. It was too soon to know if such a future awaited them. But for now, for this unexpected moment, it felt wonderfully, terrifyingly possible. The restaurant James chose was a welcome surprise, not the upscale establishment Martina had feared, with its intimidating array of silverware and hushed conversations, but a warm, family-owned place filled with the aroma of home cooking. Wooden tables gleamed under soft lighting, and the walls featured local artwork for sale. It was nice without being pretentious, the kind of place where Zoe could be a child without drawing disapproving glances. A hostess led them to a corner booth where Zoe could sit next to the window, watching the early evening traffic on the street. Outside, Martina slid in beside her daughter while James took the seat across from them. The hostess handed them menus with a friendly smile. Can I color? Zoe asked, eyeing the children's menu with its outlined pictures and puzzles on the back. Of course, the hostess said, producing a small package of crayons. The special tonight is chicken pot pie, and our soup is butternut squash. Your server will be right with you. As Zoe happily set to work coloring a cartoon bear, Martina studied the adult menu with careful attention to prices, an automatic habit she couldn't break, even though James had made it clear he was paying. Their roast chicken is excellent, James offered, noticing her scrutiny. And honestly, anything from their comfort food section is a good choice. The owner's grandmother was from Tennessee, and many of the recipes came from her. Martina nodded, relaxing a fraction. It all sounds good. I think I'll try the chicken. She looked up to find James watching her with an expression she couldn't quite read. Thank you for suggesting this place. It's perfect. I'm glad you like it. I discovered it on a business trip last year and make a point of coming back whenever I'm in town, he set his menu aside. So, Ms. Jenkins, Martina, please, she interrupted gently. The formality seemed unnecessary now that they were sharing a meal. Martina, he amended with a slight smile. And I'm James. A server approached with water glasses and took their orders. Roast chicken for Martina, pot pie for James, and chicken fingers for Zoe, who requested extra mashed potatoes with the solemnity of a judge delivering a verdict. When the server departed, James leaned forward slightly, his manner becoming more businesslike without losing its warmth. Let me tell you a bit about the position at Horizon Technologies. Our financial systems analyst works directly with our CFO to monitor and improve our financial tracking systems across all departments. The role involves analyzing current processes, identifying inefficiencies, and implementing solutions. It sounded exactly like the work Martina had excelled at with Ellis Group. What specific systems do you use? Currently, we're running Oracle, Financial, but we're considering transitioning to a more integrated solution. That would be one of your first major projects, evaluating options and making recommendations. Martina nodded, interest genuinely piqued. System transitions can be challenging, but they're also an opportunity to build something better from the ground up. Exactly. James looked pleased by her response. You'd also be working closely with our department heads to understand their financial reporting needs and ensure our systems meet them. Cross-departmental communication is essential, Martina agreed. In my experience, the most common breakdown occurs when technical solutions don't account for practical workflows. Their conversation flowed easily into the specifics of financial systems, reporting structures, and analytical approaches. Martina found herself engaged in a way she hadn't been since leaving Ellis Group. James asked insightful questions about her previous work and seemed genuinely interested in her perspectives on financial management. Meanwhile, Zoe had finished, coloring, and was now working on a word puzzle, her tongue caught between her teeth in concentration. She interrupted occasionally with questions or observations, which James acknowledged with the same respectful attention he gave to Martina's comments. When their food arrived, the conversation paused naturally. Zoe dove into her chicken fingers with enthusiasm, while Martina savored the perfectly seasoned roast chicken and fresh vegetables. It was the best meal they'd had in weeks. So, James said after they had eaten for a few minutes, what would you consider your greatest professional accomplishment so far? The question was a standard interview prompt, but his tone made it feel like genuine curiosity rather than assessment. Martina considered her answer carefully. At Ellis, I identified a pattern in our materials wastage that no one had noticed because it crossed departmental lines. By developing a tracking system that connected those data points, we reduced waste by nearly 15% in the first year. The savings were significant enough that I received a commendation from the board. James nodded appreciatively. That's impressive. What about your greatest challenge? Martina hesitated. In a normal interview, she would give a carefully crafted answer about overcoming technical obstacles or managing difficult team dynamics. But something about James's directness invited honesty. Coming back from a 3-year gap in my corporate career, she admitted. Many employers see the break in my resume and assume my skills are outdated or that I'm not serious about my profession. Even though maintaining any kind of work while being a single parent demonstrates exceptional organizational skills and dedication, James observed. Exactly. The scheduling alone is a masterclass in time management. Martina smiled ruefully. But that doesn't show up on a resume. It should. James's response was immediate and firm. At Horizon, we value diverse experiences. Life skills translate to professional settings more than traditional hiring practices acknowledge. Martina felt a surprising flutter of hope. This didn't sound like empty corporate speak. He seemed to genuinely believe what he was saying. Tell me about Horizon's company culture, she asked. Articles mention your employee-centered policies, but what does that mean in practice? It means we recognize that our employees are whole people with lives beyond their desks. James set down his fork. Practically speaking, we offer flexible scheduling, comprehensive benefits including childcare assistance, mental health support, and career development opportunities. We've found that when people aren't constantly worried about basic security, they're more innovative, loyal, and productive. This sounded too good to be true. And that approach has been successful? Our retention rate is 92%, well above industry average, and our profits have increased every year since implementation. James's expression grew more personal. But numbers aside, it's the right thing to do. My mother missed every school play, every parent-teacher conference, because she couldn't afford to take the time off. I vowed that no one working for me would face those same impossible choices. The mention of his mother reminded Martina that he had shared his own story of growing up with financial instability. Perhaps that explained his understanding of her situation, not pity, but recognition. It sounds like an enlightened approach, she said carefully. But I have to ask, why me? You must have access to candidates with unbroken work histories, with more recent corporate experience. Frankly, we've interviewed dozens of candidates with pristine resumes and current corporate positions. They had the technical qualifications, but lacked the problem-solving creativity and determination we're looking for. James leaned forward. What I saw today, your resourcefulness, your dignity under pressure, your ability to care for your daughter while preparing for a professional opportunity, tells me more about your character and capabilities than any resume could. Zoe, who had been quietly eating, looked up at her mother. Mommy's super smart with numbers. She helps Mrs. Lee with her shop money every Tuesday, and she fixed Mr. Rivera's taxes when they got all mixed up. Martina smoothed her daughter's hair, touched by the simple pride in her voice. That's right, baby. I help our neighbors sometimes. Community involvement, too, James noted with a smile. You're making my case for me. A warm feeling spread through Martina's chest, something she hadn't experienced in a professional context for too long, the sensation of being truly valued for her abilities. What's the salary range for this position? She asked, bringing herself back to practical concerns. James named a figure that made Martina blink in surprise. It was significantly higher than what she had been earning at Ellis Group, and nearly double what Vantage Financial had indicated for their open position. That's very generous, she managed. It's market rate for someone with your experience and skills, James corrected gently, plus our benefits package, which, as I mentioned, includes childcare assistance. The implications washed over Martina in waves. A salary like that would mean no more counting coins, no more choosing between fixing the car and buying new shoes for Zoe's growing feet. No more lying awake at night calculating and recalculating how to stretch too little too far. It would mean security, stability, perhaps even some modest savings for Zoe's future education, but suspicion lingered at the edges of her hope. This all seems very sudden. Don't you need to check my referrer? Renses? Review my actual resume? Have me meet with your HR department or the CFO? Normally, yes, James acknowledged. And those steps would still need to happen. I can't unilaterally hire you without following our established processes, but I can fast-track your application and strongly recommend you to our hiring committee. That made more sense. So this isn't a formal offer. Not yet. But it's a very strong expression of interest from someone whose opinion carries significant weight. James's eyes crinkled slightly at the corners. I wouldn't waste either of our time if I didn't believe this could work out extremely well for everyone involved. Zoe had finished her chicken fingers and was now arranging her remaining mashed potatoes into a smiley face. Can I have dessert? She asked hopefully. If you eat 3 more bites of green beans, Martina negotiated, falling into their familiar routine. Zoe considered this, then nodded seriously. Deal. She speared a green bean with exaggerated focus. James watched their interaction with an expression that seemed almost wistful. How old is your daughter? 6. She just started first grade. Martina helped Zoe cut the green beans into smaller pieces. She loves school, especially math and art. A good combination. Creative problem-solving starts there. James's voice softened. My mother used to quiz me on multiplication tables while she ironed other people's clothes for extra money. She made it into a game so I wouldn't realize we couldn't afford the fancy flashcards my classmates had. The image resonated with Martina, who had created counting games with Zoe using dried beans when they couldn't afford store-bought learning materials. Your mother sounds like a remarkable woman, she said sincerely. She was. A shadow crossed his face briefly. She passed away just as my company was beginning to succeed. Too late for me to give her the comfortable retirement she deserved. I'm sorry. Martina recognized the regret in his voice. She had heard it in her own when she thought of all the things Thomas would miss in Zoe's life. James shook his head slightly, as if clearing away the melancholy. The point is, I recognize the determination it takes to build a good life against difficult odds. That kind of persistence and creativity is invaluable in any organization. Zoe triumphantly ate her third green bean. Dessert now? The server, who had been keeping a discreet eye on their table, approached with perfect timing. Can I interest anyone in our dessert menu? The apple crumble is fresh out of the oven. Yes, please. Zoe's enthusiasm made them all smile. As Zoe deliberated between apple crumble and chocolate cake with the seriousness of a Supreme Court justice, Martina considered the unexpected turn her day had taken. That morning, she had been counting coins and worrying about how they would manage until her next paycheck. Now she was discussing a job opportunity that could change everything. It felt like a dream, the kind she had stopped allowing herself to have because disappointment hurt too much. Yet James Whitaker seemed genuine. The position he described matched her skills perfectly, and Horizon Technologies had a reputation for integrity that even cynical business publications acknowledged. If I were to pursue this opportunity, Martina said carefully after they had ordered dessert, chocolate cake for Zoe, apple crumble to share for the adults. What would the next steps be? I'll have my assistant send you the formal job description and application tonight. It's mostly a formality in your case, but we need it for our records. James pulled out his phone and made a quick note. Then, if you're interested, we can arrange for you to meet with our CFO and HR director as soon as possible. Perhaps even this week, if that works for your schedule. This week? Martina blinked in surprise. Corporate hiring processes typically dragged on for weeks or months. As I mentioned, we've been trying to fill this position for some time. When the right candidate appears, we move quickly. James put his phone away. Of course, this is assuming you're interested. You might find tomorrow's interview with Vantage more appealing. Martina considered this seriously. Vantage is a good company, but from what you've described, the position at Horizon would be a better fit for my experience and goals. She hesitated, then decided on complete honesty. And the truth is, the compensation and benefits you've outlined would make an enormous difference for Zoe and me. James nodded, his expression one of understanding rather than pity. Financial security matters. There's no shame in acknowledging that. The desserts arrived, momentarily distracting Zoe, who gazed at her chocolate cake with unabashed delight. Look how big it is, Mommy. Very big, Martina agreed, grateful for the brief respite from weighty decisions. You might need some help. With that, I can do it, Zoe declared, picking up her fork with determination. James laughed. I admire your confidence, Zoe. As they enjoyed their desserts, the conversation shifted to lighter topics. James asked Zoe about school and listened with genuine interest to her detailed description of the class pet, a hamster named Whiskers who could run through a tube maze. He shared a few stories from his own school days, including a science fair, disaster involving a volcano model that erupted far more enthusiastically than intended. The easy interaction between James and Zoe surprised Martina. Many business professionals she had encountered either ignored children completely or spoke to them with condescending baby talk. James did neither, treating Zoe with the same respectful attention he had shown to Martina. By the time they finished their meal, the restaurant had grown busier, the dinner crowd filling most tables. Zoe was beginning to show signs of tiredness, the excitement of the day catching up with her. We should probably get you both to your hotel, James said, noticing Zoe's yawn. You have a big day tomorrow. The reminder of tomorrow's interview with Vantage Financial felt strange now, almost like an obligation to be fulfilled rather than the crucial opportunity it had been that morning. Still, Martina was determined to approach it with the same professionalism and preparation she brought to everything. Yes, we should get some rest, she agreed, helping Zoe gather her crayons and the paper placemat she had decorated. James signaled for the check, which the server brought promptly. He paid with a credit card, adding a generous tip without fanfare. I've asked the driver to meet us out front, he said as they left the restaurant. He'll take you directly to your hotel. Outside, the evening air had grown cooler. Zoe leaned against Martina's side, her earlier energy fading. The same sleek black car from the airport waited at the curb, the driver standing attentively beside it. "Thank you for dinner," Martina said, feeling the words were inadequate for everything the evening had come to represent. "And for the opportunity," James smiled. "Thank you for considering it. I believe you'd be an excellent addition to our team at Horizon." As the driver opened the rear door, Zoe looked up at James. "Are you going to be Mommy's new boss?" "Not exactly," he explained. "If your mother joins Horizon, she'll work with our financial team. I'm just the person who helps make sure everyone has what they need to do their jobs well." Zoe considered this. "Like my principal. She doesn't teach the classes, but she makes sure the school works good." "That's a very good comparison," James agreed, clearly impressed by her understanding. Martina helped Zoe into the car, then turned back to James. "I'll look for the email with the application tonight. It should arrive within the hour." "And Martina?" He hesitated, then continued. "Whatever you decide, I wish you and Zoe all the best. You're doing an amazing job under difficult circumstances." The simple acknowledgement nearly undid her. How long had it been since anyone had recognized the constant effort it took just to keep going day after day? Since anyone had seen her struggles, not as deficiencies but as testimony to her strength? "Thank you," she managed, her voice steadier than she felt. James handed her a business card, a different one from earlier, she noticed. "My personal cell number is on the back. If you have any questions or concerns about the position, please don't hesitate to call regardless of the hour." Martina took the card, oddly touched by the gesture. "I appreciate that. Good luck tomorrow with Vantage," he said. "Though selfishly, I hope you'll consider Horizon's offer more appealing." With a final smile and a wave to Zoe, James stepped back, allowing Martina to enter the car. As the driver pulled away from the curb, Zoe leaned her head against Martina's arm, her eyelids drooping. "I like Mr. James," she murmured sleepily. "He listens good." "Yes, he does," Martina agreed, stroking her daughter's hair. Through the rear window she could see James still standing on the sidewalk, watching their departure. He raised a hand in farewell as the car turned a corner and he vanished from sight. Martina leaned back against the seat, her mind spinning with possibilities she hadn't dared consider that morning. The coins she had counted so carefully on the plane now seemed like relics from another life, one that perhaps, just perhaps, they were finally leaving behind. Tomorrow she would keep her appointment with Vantage Financial, approaching it with the same professionalism and preparation she brought to everything. But tonight, for the first time in years, she would allow herself to hope for something better. Not just survival, but thriving. Not just making do, but building a future where counting coins would be a choice, not a necessity. As the city lights blurred past the window, Martina held her sleeping daughter close, protecting the fragile flame of possibility that had been kindled by an unexpected encounter and a handful of spilled coins. 3 months had passed since that fateful flight to Minneapolis. Martina stood at the window of her office on the 14th floor of the Horizon Technologies building in downtown Chicago, watching the late afternoon sunlight glint off Lake Michigan in the distance. Her office, her actual office with a door that closed and a nameplate that read, Martina Jenkins, Financial Systems Director, still felt like something from a dream some days. She turned back to her computer, where the quarterly financial report waited for her final review before tomorrow's board meeting. In just 3 months, her team had implemented changes to the company's financial tracking systems that had already improved efficiency by 8%. The projection showed they could reach 15% by year's end, exceeding even her ambitious targets. A gentle knock at her door pulled her attention away from the screen. "Come in," she called, expecting one of her team members with last-minute questions about the report. Instead, James Whitaker stood in the doorway, his tie slightly loosened after a day of meetings. "Got a minute?" he asked. "Of course." Martina gestured to the chair across from her desk, still not entirely used to the casual way Horizon's CEO interacted with employees at all levels. "I was just reviewing the quarterly numbers. That's actually why I'm here." James sat down, his expression pleased. The board got an advance copy this morning. They're impressed, Martina. The systems integration is proceeding faster and more smoothly than anyone anticipated. We have a good team, she said, reflexively sharing the credit. And the department heads have been surprisingly receptive to the changes. Because you took the time to understand their concerns and address them directly. James leaned forward slightly. That was the missing piece with our previous attempts. Technical solutions without human understanding don't work. Martina nodded, remembering her initial meetings with each department, how she had asked questions and truly listened before proposing anything new. It was an approach born of necessity during her contract work for small businesses. When you couldn't rely on corporate authority to push changes through, you had to build genuine buy-in. How's the childcare working out for Zoe? James asked, shifting to a more personal topic with the ease that characterized Horizon's people-first culture. Wonderfully. Martina couldn't help but smile. She loves the center downstairs. Having her so close is... She paused, still sometimes overwhelmed by the luxury of knowing her daughter was safe, happy, and just an elevator ride away if needed. Good. James nodded, clearly pleased. And the new apartment? All settled in? Almost. The spacious two-bedroom apartment in a safe neighborhood with good schools had been another life-changing aspect of their move to Horizon. With her substantial salary, Martina had qualified for a mortgage, but had decided to rent for a year first, building savings while they adjusted to their new life. We're still getting used to having so much space. She thought back to their tiny one-bedroom in their old neighborhood, where Zoe had slept in the bedroom while Martina took the pull-out sofa. How they had learned to move around each other in the cramped kitchen like dancers in a carefully choreographed routine. How even the bathroom had barely had room to turn around. Now Zoe had her own bedroom, decorated in the purple and teal colors she loved, with a real desk for homework and shelves for her growing collection of books. Martina had a bedroom too, with a window that caught the morning light and a closet that held her expanding professional wardrobe. No more rotating the same 3 outfits for interviews and hoping no one noticed. I have some news, James said, bringing her back to the present. The board has approved the bonus structure we discussed for your department. The efficiency gains qualify for the top tier. Martina blinked in surprise. The bonus program had been discussed as a possibility, not a certainty. That's wonderful. The team will be thrilled. They should be. It was their hard work, guided by your leadership. James handed her a folder. The details are all in here. The bonuses will be included in next month's payroll. Martina accepted the folder, knowing without looking that her own bonus as department director would be substantial. Another cushion of security for Zoe's future. Another step away from counting coins and calculating survival. A text message alert chimed from her phone. Martina glanced at the screen and smiled. That's from the center downstairs. Zoe just finished her art project and wants to show me. Don't let me keep you, James said immediately, rising from his chair. Family comes first around here, remember? Those words, family comes first, had been among the first things James had said to her during her formal interview 3 months ago. She had almost cried then, thinking of all the school events she had missed, all the bedtime stories cut short because she had to prepare for the next day's work or take on extra bookkeeping to make rent. At Horizon, she had yet to miss a single school event or parent-teacher meeting. The flexible scheduling meant she could adjust her hours when needed without fear of judgment or penalty. And the on-site childcare center meant Zoe was never far away, never with a succession of barely affordable babysitters or left alone as a latchkey kid, the way Martina had worried might eventually become necessary. I'll just be a few minutes, she assured James. The board meeting prep is nearly complete. Take your time. The company won't collapse if you spend 15 minutes appreciating your daughter's artistic talents. His smile was warm, genuine. That's what this is all about, Martina. Building a company that supports whole lives, not just work lives. As James left her office, Martina gathered her things to head downstairs. She passed her team members, still hard at work, but without the frantic, stressed energy she had known at other companies. People at Horizon worked hard, but they also laughed often, collaborated genuinely, and went home at reasonable hours. In the elevator, Martina found herself standing next to Rita from marketing, who was also heading to the childcare center to pick up her son. "How's that new system working out?" Rita asked conversationally. "My team loves the reporting dashboard you created, so much clearer than what we had before." "I'm glad it's helpful," Martina replied. "We're still fine-tuning some features. Let me know if you have any suggestions for improvements." "Will do." Rita smiled as the elevator doors opened at the lobby level. "We're still on for that play date this weekend. Jason is very excited about going to the aquarium with Zoe." "Absolutely. Zoe's been talking about it all week." The casual social plans still felt novel to Martina. In their old life, playdates had been rare, limited by transportation challenges and the lack of safe, affordable activities nearby. The childcare center occupied a bright, spacious area off the main lobby, with large windows and colorful educational decorations. Martina signed in at the secure entrance, then followed the sounds of children's voices to the art room. Zoe sat at a round table with several other children, her face serious with concentration as she added final touches to a painting. When she looked up and saw Martina, her whole face lit up with joy. "Mommy, come see what I made." Martina crossed the room, nodding greetings to the childcare staff she had come to know well. "What have you been creating, sweetheart?" Zoe proudly held up a painting of what appeared to be their new apartment building, complete with blue sky, green trees, and two figures standing in front. One tall, one small, both with broad smiles. "That's our home," Zoe explained unnecessarily. "And that's you and me." "It's beautiful," Martina said sincerely, taking in the vibrant colors and careful details. "You've even included the flowers by the entrance." "Ms. Patty says we can hang it up to dry overnight and take it home tomorrow," Zoe informed her, carefully placing the painting on the drying rack. "Can we put it on the refrigerator?" "Of course we can." Martina helped Zoe clean her paintbrush and wash her hands. "Are you ready to go home? We need to stop at the grocery store on the way." "Can we get ingredients for spaghetti?" Zoe asked hopefully as she gathered her backpack.